It was a crisp autumn evening, and I decided to take a visit to our local mall. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I joined the crowd of shoppers and families. I strolled through familiar stores, occasionally making small talk with friends I bumped into. The shopping center was well lit and security personnel patrolled the area, so I felt safe. Just another shopper navigating the endless aisles and sales. Around the time the mall started to get crowded, I noticed someone. He was tall with scruffy hair and a heavy black overcoat, even though the weather didn't call for it. What struck me as peculiar was that he was everywhere I went. At first I brushed it off, thinking it was a coincidence, but my unease grew as I realized he was following me. I wandered into a department store, hoping to lose him among the clothes and shelves, but he stayed close. I picked up a few items and entered the changing rooms. The man lurked outside, pacing impatiently. I felt trapped, a growing sense of dread coursing through my veins. I decided to make a break for it, quickly paying for my items and darting into the mall's central courtyard, hoping the crowd would offer some protection. The neon lights and cheerful music gave me a small sense of reassurance. I texted my friend Sarah, who was also at the mall, about my predicament. We arranged to meet in the bustling food court. My stalker, seemingly undeterred, followed me at a distance, his cold eyes locked on me. My heart pounded, and I tried to keep my composure, acting like everything was normal. Sarah soon arrived, and I breathed a sigh of relief. She could tell I was genuinely frightened. We decided to approach mall security and inform them about the unsettling situation. 2 officers listened to our story attentively, and they agreed to accompany us while keeping an eye on the man. The presence of security seemed to deter the stalker. He disappeared into the mall's labyrinth of shops and passageways. It felt like we had won, at least for that moment. Relieved, I resumed my shopping, Sarah at my side and the security officers close behind, but just when I thought it was over, the man reappeared, and my fear returned. He wore a sinister smile as he continued to follow us. I couldn't shake the feeling that he was playing a sadistic game. We returned to mall security, and this time they decided to call the local police. Officers arrived promptly and took over. They questioned the man and checked his identification. To our astonishment, they discovered that he had a history of stalking and a restraining order against him. He was promptly arrested, and I finally felt safe again. The ordeal was a stark reminder of how real-life horrors could unfold in everyday places. The mall, once a symbol of leisure, had become a haunting experience. I'd never forget the unsettling feeling of being pursued and the relief that washed over me when the authorities intervened. It was a typical Friday night when I started my night shift at the mall, working as a security guard. The mall was mostly deserted, with only a handful of cleaning staff and a late-night employee or 2 wrapping up their shifts. It was around midnight when I made my rounds through the mall, checking the locks on store entrances and ensuring all was secure. As I turned the corner near the food court, I spotted an eerie figure in the dimly lit hallway. A man wearing a black hoodie, dark pants, and a grotesque purge mask covering his face stood there motionless. He clutched a pistol in his gloved hand. Panic surged through me. I pressed my hand to my walkie-talkie, ready to call for backup. Before I could react, the masked intruder turned and sprinted toward the jewelry store, shattering the glass entrance with the butt of his gun. The alarm blared loudly as I fumbled with my walkie-talkie to alert the police. I couldn't tear my eyes away from the surreal sight of the masked man ransacking the jewelry displays. But the most disturbing part of it all was his laughter, muffled by the purge mask, as he reveled in the chaos he had created. I knew I had to act fast, so I radioed for help, hoping that they would arrive before things spiraled further out of control. Time seemed to stretch into eternity as I waited for a response on my walkie-talkie. The mall's alarm continued to wail, a reminder of the chaos unfolding around me. The intruder, still wearing that ghastly purge mask, gleefully smashed display cases, collecting jewels and precious items with reckless abandon. As I edged closer to the jewelry store, my heart pounding like a drum, A sense of urgency coursed through me. A distorted voice squawked from my walkie-talkie. It was another security guard on duty. He had heard my call and was racing to join me. Relief washed over me as I relayed the situation and our location. Unbeknownst to the intruder, a pair of eyes watched him from the shadows. Cindy, one of the late-night cleaning staff, had witnessed the break-in from her hiding place behind a potted plant. Her wide eyes reflected terror. As my fellow security guard approached the scene, we made eye contact. Silent nods exchanged between us said it all. We needed to stop this criminal before things turned worse. Our heart rates increased, but there was no turning back now. As we entered the jewelry store, we could still hear the chilling laughter of the masked man. We split up to surround him, hoping to catch him off guard. I took a deep breath and turned the corner into the main display area. And there he was, still cackling and tossing jewelry into a duffel bag. He was so engrossed in his looting that he hadn't noticed me. I pressed the cold steel barrel of my flashlight against his back, trying to steady my trembling hand. "Drop the weapon," I ordered, my voice quivering. The masked man flinched, then slowly turned to face me. His eyes locked onto mine through the purge mask. I swallowed hard, realizing that the terrifying laughter had now ceased. In its place was an eerie silence, heavy with tension and uncertainty. Our standoff had reached its apex, and I couldn't help but wonder what would happen next. This mall, a haven of commerce during the day, had transformed into a battleground, and I stood at the epicenter of a perilous encounter. The stale air in the jewelry store hung thick with tension, like an approaching storm ready to unleash its fury. The masked man and I stood frozen, my flashlight still pressed against his back as he kept his eerie gaze locked on me through the grotesque purge mask. The suffocating silence seemed to stretch on forever. Just when it felt like a violent confrontation was imminent, an unexpected twist of fate unfolded. The cleaning staff member Cindy, who had been hiding in the shadows, made her move. She lunged at the masked man, her mop raised high, and brought it down with all her might, knocking the gun from his grip. The weapon clattered loudly on the tile floor, and a collective gasp escaped my lips. The intruder staggered back, momentarily stunned by the sudden turn of events. I seized the opportunity and lunged forward, pinning him against a display case. My hands trembling, I struggled to handcuff him while he squirmed beneath my grasp. With the robber now securely detained, we finally breathed sighs of relief. Minutes later, the police arrived, taking the man into custody. I watched as they removed the purge mask, revealing a face that was more desperate and pitiful than menacing. The criminal was led away, still struggling to comprehend how his seemingly foolproof heist had crumbled so suddenly. As the situation was brought under control, a sense of gratitude washed over me. I thanked Cindy profusely for her courage and quick thinking. It was her unexpected intervention that had turned the tide in our favor. The mall was quickly secured, and the shattered display cases were examined for missing items. The alarm ceased its blaring, leaving behind a ringing silence that seemed almost surreal after the night's chaotic events. In the days that followed, the incident was a topic of fervent discussion among mall employees and security personnel. Cindy, once a quiet and unassuming member of the cleaning staff, had become an overnight hero. Her actions had not only thwarted a robbery, but also saved me from what could have been a violent encounter. Working the night shift as a security guard at the mall had its perks. It was peaceful, with few people around, and my responsibilities mainly consisted of making sure the premises were secure. Most nights were uneventful, until one peculiar evening changed everything. As I strolled through the dark corridors, the occasional sound of footsteps reverberated off the polished floors. I knew it was just the cleaning staff, but something felt different that night. My flashlight cut through the inky darkness, casting eerie shadows on the impeccably dressed mannequins that adorned the various storefronts. Most people would consider mannequins lifeless, inanimate objects, but alone in a dimly lit mall, these uncanny, human-like figures took on a sinister presence. Their vacant eyes and plastic smiles seemed more menacing in the shadows. I paused near a boutique displaying high-end evening gowns, feeling a shiver creep up my spine. The mannequins here were something else, meticulously crafted to look almost too real. They wore elegant dresses, but in the dark, they appeared to be frozen in a macabre dance, their faces twisted in expressions of agony. Shaking off the eerie feeling, I continued my rounds. A sudden noise from one of the stores sent me on high alert. It was like the sound of a dress rustling against a hanger, but it was far too late for any employees to be present. I cautiously approached the source of the noise. The sounds continued intermittently, growing louder as I drew closer. My flashlight revealed that a particular mannequin, clad in a wedding gown, had shifted. Its head now faced in an entirely different direction, its eerily lifelike eyes locking onto mine. I hesitated for a moment, convinced that it was just a prank or a malfunctioning mannequin, but then it moved. Its plastic, claw-like fingers twitched, and a guttural moan escaped its gaping mouth. I stepped back in terror, my heart racing. The other mannequins around me began to move as well. Slowly, their lifeless forms came to life, turning their heads to face me. They encircled me, and the dimly lit corridor echoed with their bizarre, creaking motions. Panicking, I tried to contact the mall's cleaning staff, but my walkie-talkie emitted nothing but static. The mannequins continued to close in, their eyes fixed on me. It was as if they were silently accusing me, blaming me for a fate I couldn't comprehend. In a desperate bid to escape, I fled down the corridor, my flashlight cutting through the oppressive darkness. As I reached the mall's entrance, I noticed the mannequins had followed, their sinister dance growing more frenzied. Desperation clawed at my mind as I unlocked the massive glass doors and cold night air rushed in. I burst out of the mall, gasping for breath. Behind me, the mannequins remained trapped within, their lifeless eyes staring into the darkness. I never worked another night shift at that mall. The mere thought of those unsettling figures kept me far away. To this day, I can't help but wonder what happened during those eerie hours when the mannequins seemed to awaken, their plastic features contorted in sinister ways. Was it a bizarre, unexplained event, or was there something more malevolent lurking in the darkness of the mall?